this module we'll be talking about the laws, policies, and reporting options when it comes to power-based violence. So first and foremost, reporting power-based violence is a deeply personal choice, and it's a choice that only the survivor can really make. Many survivors may choose not to report their experiences, and so it's really important that we respect their wishes as well. Some folks may choose not to report out of fear of being blamed, the desire to move on without having to talk about it or go through a whole reporting process. Some survivors really care about that person or persons who may have hurt them. And really there's a million other reasons. And so whatever someone chooses, whether to report or not, that's really their choice. But if someone is considering reporting power-based violence, they do have several options. They can choose to report it to the police, which may result in a criminal investigation. They may choose to file a civil lawsuit, and those affiliated with the university can even choose to report it through the Title IX office. One important note is that if folks are choosing to report any sort of power-based violence, it has to be reported in the jurisdiction where it happened, which usually means whatever city it happened in, it has to be reported to those officers. For example, with Tennessee Tech, if someone's completely unaffiliated with Tennessee Tech, they don't go here at all, they couldn't really come and report it through our Title IX process. Any person who chooses to report power-based violence, they always have the legal option or right to have someone with them, a support person, when they go to make that report. So a few concerns with reporting overall. A big concern folks have when it comes to reports of power-based violence is that people lie about this kind of stuff all of the time or have false reports. And that's really, statistically speaking, that's just not the case. There's a lot of evidence that says that false reports make up about 2 to 8%, which is the same false report rate for any other violent crime. So false reports do happen, and it's horrible if they do, because that's a horrible thing to lie about. However, it's really not common. Most of the time, if someone says that they've been victimized, they are telling the truth. So it's important that we start by believing and providing support and resources to them. Another thing that folks don't often know about is what recanting means. So recanting means that they have gone and reported it, let's say, to the police. And then as that process is going on, they've decided they don't want to continue with that investigation because it's too draining. And so they choose to withdraw their complaint or recant. It doesn't mean they were lying, which is often portrayed in the media that way. It just means they've decided not to move forward for whatever reason. Another thing to be mindful of when we're talking about reporting is that experience of power-based violence is traumatizing. And so a lot of folks who've experienced this are trauma survivors, and they might have a hard time because of that trauma recalling exactly what happened in the way like a normal memory would work. Trauma really impacts the way that that memory is encoded in their brain. And there's a lot more resources about that we'll have throughout these modules. Another thing that's really common to see with power-based violence is delayed reporting. So that's where folks might not report what happened to them right away. They might take days, weeks, months, or even years to go and report what's happened to them, and that could be out of memory issues from that trauma, that could be working up the courage to go report it, it could be a million different things. And that's why there's often a statute of limitations that you need to consider. So some crimes have a statute of limitations where it can only be reported for a certain amount of time, and of course the longer someone waits to report it, that might have implications on how much evidence can be gathered and whether or not any kind of conclusions can actually be made, or any sort of like sentences that could be made in regards to what happened. The last thing is just that power-based violence overall has really low reporting rates. So for example, just speaking about sexual assault, less than half of sexual assaults are reported to the police. And that's just the folks who felt comfortable enough to indicate in a study that they had been sexually assaulted, but they chose not to report it. And so overall, these crimes are overwhelmingly underreported, and we have a lot of work to do in these areas to help folks know what their reporting options are and to help them access those options. So speaking at the university, we have all of our policies and procedures for reporting power-based violence outlined in Policy 144. One thing to be mindful of is that there's been some updating with these policies because the U.S. Department of Education has released new guidelines. And so this policy should be accessible by the time y'all are accessing this video. Be sure to check out the other video on how to access policies so that you can find this policy and all the other ones that you should know as a student. Title IX as a whole, though, comes out of a federal law, and it's the idea that no person should be excluded from participating in or denied any benefits of anything, especially when it comes to educational programs, on the basis of their sex. And so power-based violence is lumped into this. So the Title IX process is that a formal complaint would be made to Title IX, and then they might launch an investigation. The thing that's awesome about Title IX that a lot of folks don't know, though, is just because you call Title IX doesn't mean you have to go through a formal investigation. You can call Title IX and access resources like supportive measures that can help you to navigate healing processes, even if you decide that you don't want to report. Because every case is really different, it's not actually that great to talk about what the process might look like in this sort of format because it is so case by case. But if you or a loved one is considering the Title IX process, you can absolutely reach out to the Title IX coordinator from the information on the slide to learn more about what that process might look like. Or you can reach out to Project Awaken for individualized support in what that process may look like in your case. Lastly, of course, folks who've experienced power-based violence have the option to report these crimes to law enforcement. And again, they have to be reported in whatever jurisdiction they happened. So if it happened in someone's hometown, they need to report it back in their hometown. Again, you still have the right to have someone with you if that makes you feel more comfortable when you report. But again, every single case is really different, so there's no guarantee of outcomes. Sometimes folks will expect that once I go report domestic violence, for example, to the police, they are instantly going to go arrest that perpetrator is going to go to jail. That's not always how it works. There's often these cases often take a long time to gather evidence and to actually go through the whole criminal justice system and result in any sort of convictions. And so it's not usually a super quick, you report it and someone is immediately arrested. So again, if you have questions about law enforcement, their contact information for our local law enforcement is on the slide, and they'd be best equipped to answer questions about specific instances, and Project Awaken is here as a support to talk through specific occurrences as well. But with that being said, go ahead and look through the rest of the content for this module.